Today you are going to read a chapter from the novel David and the Phoenix. Before we read this together, I would like you to go back to the front of your packet and look at the 3 different types of figurative language that we learned about this week. You will have about 2 minutes to please reread what it is and means to be a simile, what it is and means to be a metaphor, and what it is to be personification when you are phrases and words in the text. Go. Okay. After looking over the definitions of those words, you will use what you've learned about those figurative language pieces to analyze the characters, events, and the mood in the story. I'm going to read this story with you, and you will use what you learned to think about and write about the text. As you read, I want you to remember and look closely at the figurative language in order to get a sense of what this character is feeling and the mood of the story. So not only will we be using our context clues to find the answers to our questions, but also be looking at the mood of the story and how the character is feeling throughout the story. When looking at our passage, we want to, of course, read the title and make predictions. And then we need to go and look at our questions that we will be answering. Question number 1 says, the first question has 2 parts. First part A, then answer part B. Part A, what does David think about the mountains? Part B, which example of figurative language is from the story best supports the answer to part A? So we want to go in and look at the important words in our questions. So our questions here tell us, what does he think about the mountains? That is important to highlight. Next is this word supports. Supports means to back it up. Part B is complete. Now we will go to number 2. Read the sentence and then answer the question. It swept upward from the valley floor, beautifully shaped and soaring, so tall that its misty blue peaks could surely talk face to face with the stars. What mood is the author trying to create by using the personification talk to face and face? So I circled personification and I underlined the word mood because those would be important when we're answering our questions. Next is number 3. Read the sentence from paragraph 1. But David walked slowly into the backyard, his eyes fixed on the ground. What does the word fixed mean as used in the sentence? So fixed is already underlined, and I'm going to circle the word mean because we are looking for the meaning. Now mean is also a multiple meaning word, and this does not mean like being rude or unkind, but mean means what is the meaning or the definition of the word. Part B. Which detail from the story provides the best clue for the meaning of the word fixed? So we need to look for one clue, and just one. Number 4. Read the sentence in the directions that follow. When David finally got a chance to sneak out for a breathing spell, he felt his heart sink. Underline the sentence in the paragraph that best helps you understand the meaning of the phrase, sneak out for a breath. And lastly, number 5, which will be your homework tonight, read the following sentence from the story. It almost seemed like the mountains waving its hand, as if to say it is quite all right for him to wait until the morning. What does the phrase, like the mountain waving its hand, tell the reader about the mountains? Don't forget, you need to use your figurative language, academic vocabulary in that answer. Words like personification and figurative language. Okay, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to read the story to you. When I am done reading the story, you will work on the questions independently and then check your answers with a neighbor. Here we go. This story is from the first chapter of a novel about a boy whose family goes into a new home near a mountain. In the chapter that follows, the boy goes hiking on the mountain and meets a strange bird called Phoenix, a famous creature from mythology. Throughout the novel, the boy and the Phoenix share exciting adventures together. From David and the Phoenix. Paragraph 1. All the way there, David had saved this moment for himself, struggling not to peek until the proper time came. When the car finally stopped, the rest of them got out stiffly and went into the new house. But David walked slowly into the backyard, his eyes fixed on the ground. For a whole minute he stood there, not daring to look up. Then he took a deep breath, clenched his hands tightly, and lifted his head. Okay, I see the word fixed. That's in our questions. When I look at that word fixed, I'm going to look at the words before it and after it and try to find context clues that helps me know the meaning. The words after it say, for a whole minute he stood there, not daring to look up. So seeing that phrase, not daring to look up, helps me understand the meaning of eyes fixed. Not daring to look up, eyes fixed, I think that his eyes are focused, looking down at the ground. Next page, page 275, number 2. There it was, as Dad had described it, but infinitely more grand. It swept upward from the valley floor, beautifully shaped and soaring, so tall that its misty blue peaks could surely talk, face to face with the stars. To David, who had never seen a mountain before, the sight was almost too much to bear. He felt so tight and shivery inside that he didn't know whether he wanted to laugh or cry or both. And the wonderful thing about the mountain was the way it looked at him. He was certain that it was smiling at him, like an old friend who had been waiting for years to see him again. And when he closed his eyes, he seemed to hear a voice which whispered, "Come along, then, and climb." All right, we're going to stop at paragraph 2. I'd like you to take 2 minutes to find figurative language in paragraph 2 and identify what type of figurative language it is. Go. Okay, so hopefully you found a few things. There's one here that said it was smiling at him like an old friend who had been waiting for years to see him again. That word like is showing us that that is a simile. But more important than that, it said he was certain it was smiling at him. And that is showing personification. The boy David is thinking of the mountain as a person and thinking of the mountain as something with feelings and using words like beautifully, infinitely, and describing his feelings when he's talking about the personification of the mountain. Let's continue reading to find out more about the mood and what David thinks. But there was a great deal to do first. They were going to move into the new house. The moving van was standing out in front. The car must be unloaded. David would need to carry things. Regretfully, he waved his hand at the peak and whispered, "It shouldn't take long. I'll be back as soon as I can." Then he went around to the front door to see what could be done about spending things up. Inside, everything was in confusion. Dad was pushing chairs and tables around in an aimless way. Mother was saying, "They'll all have to go out again. We forgot to put down the rug first." Aunt Amy was making short dashes between the kitchen and the dining room, muttering to herself. and Becky was roaring in her crib because it was time for her bottle. David asked, "Can I do anything?" hoping the answer would be no. "Come here," Aunt Amy said, grabbing him by the arm. "Help me look for the ironing board." Page turn to page 276. When the ironing board was finally located, Mother had something for him to do, and when he finished with that, Dad called for help. So this afternoon wore on without let up, and also without any signs of progress in the moving. When David finally got a chance to sneak out for a breathing spell, he felt his heart sink. Somehow, in all the rush and confusion, the afternoon had disappeared. Already the evening sun was throwing shadows across the side of the mountain and touching the peak with a ruddy blaze. It was too late now. He would have to wait until morning before he could climb. Take a minute, please, to identify the figurative language in paragraph 6. Talk with your neighbor about what kind of figurative language do they have in paragraph 6. Go. Okay, we're going to continue reading. Paragraph 7. As he gazed up miserably at the glowing summit, he thought he saw a tiny speck soar out from it in a brief circle. It was a bird of some sort, or just one of those dots that swim before your eyes when you stare too long at the sky. It almost seemed like the mountains waving its hand, as if to say it was quite all right for him to wait until morning. He felt better then, and returned more cheerfully to the moving. It was long after dark before the moving van drove away. Becky crooned happily over her bottle, and the rest of them gathered in the kitchen for a late supper of sandwiches and canned soup. But David did not eat until he had found the courage to ask one question. "May I climb the mountain tomorrow?" Aunt Amy muttered something about landslides, which were firmly fixed in her mind as the fate of the people who climbed mountains. But Dad said, "I don't see why not, do you?" and looked to Mother for agreement. Mother said, "Well, be very careful," in a doubtful tone, and that was that. Good. So that is a story about David and the phoenix. When he's thinking about the mountain, he's feeling a specific way that he shows you through his actions and through his words. I'd like you now to think about how the setting of the story has changed and how the mood changed when the setting changed. What happened to the time of day? How did the time of day affect how David was feeling? Go ahead and turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor. Lastly, I'd like you to think about the point of view. Which point of view is this story told through? How does this point of view affect how David is feeling and how the reader understands how David is feeling? Turn to your neighbor and answer the question. Go. Okay, what we're going to do now is answer your questions independently. When you are done answering your questions independently, I'd like you to pair up with people at your group to check your answers. When you are done, please raise your hand and Miss Norman will check your answers. Your homework tonight is the writing prompt here on question number 5. In your short response, you need to be using words like figurative language, metaphor, simile, and personification. Make sure that you answer in complete sentences in one paragraph.